I'm going to be texting you a lot. Fair warning.
Give me a call.
Who was making that noise?
It's been quicker than Traxler. I mean, look at everything that happened yesterday.
The movie begins at a bar where Jo is working as a bartender. She notices her friend, Mark Setter, an assistant district attorney, handing money to someone at the bar and receiving something in return. Beside Mark is his friend Larry. Mark orders a beer at the bar and asks Jo about her plans after work. Later that night, they share a private moment, but Mark's alarm goes off. He quickly turns on the TV, which reports his victory in the Delitzano case, exposing the company owner responsible for many deaths. Mark leaves Jo's house, despite her reluctance. He asks if she's happy about the case, and though she downplays it, her smile reveals her joy. Before leaving, Jo warns him about Ernie Ducks, but Mark reassures her that he can handle it. Mark puts on his promise ring and ensures Jo gets home safely. While driving, he calls his wife, Sharon, who mentions seeing him on TV. Suddenly, a car follows him and crashes into his vehicle, cutting the call short.
This is the voicemail of Mark Setter. Please leave me a message.
Carmen Traxler visits Sharon to break the devastating news of Mark's death. Overcome with grief, Sharon goes to the hospital with Carmen to identify his body. There, Sharon shares her belief that Mark's death wasn't accidental. Carmen agrees, suspecting Mark's enemies as a lawyer, and promises to uncover the truth. Jo learns about Mark's death from the news and is devastated, especially after discovering he had a wife. At Mark's funeral, Jo watches from a distance as his friends console Sharon. Larry, one of Mark's closest friends, assures Sharon she can always rely on him. That evening, Larry returns home and encounters an intruder, Strand, and his guard, Sheldon. Strand demands information about the material Mark received from Ducks. Larry denies knowing anything, but Strand threatens to confront Sharon. Noticing a picture of Sharon on Larry's table, Strand presses him, and Larry finally admits the material is with Ducks. The next day, Jo attends Mark's funeral. Sharon unexpectedly approaches her, asking if she knew Mark. They introduce themselves and share a heartfelt conversation about him. As Jo gets ready to leave, Sharon stops her, saying it's comforting to talk to someone who doesn't remind her of her pain. She suggests they have a drink, and Jo invites her to a bar she owns nearby. At the bar, Sharon confides in Jo that she never knew Mark had been coming there and that he had kept it from her. She also mentions that she doesn't know the password to Mark's computer, which the detective needs for the investigation. Jo reveals that Mark had a meeting with two men the night he died, one of whom was Ducks, a regular at the bar. She adds that she didn't recognize the other man, but recalls Ducks handing something to Mark, which might be linked to his death. Sharon explains the Delitzano case Mark had been handling and speculates that his death could be connected to it. She then asks Jo if Mark was ever seen with another woman at the bar. Jo assures her that he wasn't. Sharon mentions that Mark had recently started wearing a pink tie, which was unusual since he hated that color. Jo begins to respond, but notices Wendy, Ducks' girlfriend, from a distance and interrupts herself to approach Wendy for more information. Jo asks Wendy if she has seen Ducks, but Wendy hesitates to answer. Jo then persuades her by offering to cover the cost of her drinks if she reveals Ducks' whereabouts. Wendy eventually gives Jo the information she needs.
He drinks around the house if you could tell us how to find Ernie.
Sharon attempts to call Detective Carmen, but is unable to reach her, so she leaves a voicemail instead. Determined to gather more information, she and Jo decide to confront Ducks directly. Sharon is surprised and grateful for Jo's willingness to help. When they arrive at the location Wendy mentioned, Jo and Sharon enter the house. As they explore, they hear a noise coming from upstairs. Nervously, they follow the sound, only to discover Ducks dead.
Oh, God.
The shocking discovery leaves them both panicked and uncertain about what to do next. Jo notices some men leaving the house and decides to confront them. She successfully kicks the first man, and as he tries to retaliate, Sharon surprises him by kicking him from behind. Strand arrives to assist the man, but Jo quickly takes a gun from Sharon and starts shooting. However, the shots miss, and the men manage to escape. Later, Detective Carmen investigates the case. Joe explains her belief that Mark and Dux' deaths are also connected, pointing out that Dux gave Mark something significant before his death. During the investigation, Joe identifies one of the men who was at Dux' house. Meanwhile, Carmen provides Sharon with a report on Joe's background, revealing that she has a history of being in and out of state facilities for fraud. Carmen warns Sharon to be cautious about making new friends, but Sharon dismisses the warning and insists that Carmen focus on finding Mark's killer. Carmen further explains that a wealthy and powerful individual hired Lewis to eliminate problems, identifying him as an extremely dangerous man. Joe confirms the identity of the man she saw at Dux' house, solidifying their lead. Grateful for Joe's help, Sharon thanks her for saving her life and asks where she learned to fight. Joe reveals that her ex-boyfriend taught her. Later, Joe accompanies Sharon back to her house, only to find the place in disarray. Furious, Joe grabs a bottle of whiskey from the kitchen, takes a drink, and offers some to Sharon. As they sit amidst the chaos, Sharon opens up about her tragic past, sharing the heartbreaking story of her child who lived for only 6 hours. Later, Joe begins packing Sharon's clothes, insisting they need to leave for safety. She takes Sharon to her own house. While there, Sharon notices some unusual items on the table and asks Joe about them. Joe explains that they are tools she got from her ex-boyfriend, including a flashbang, which can disorient someone without causing lethal harm. While exploring the house, Sharon unexpectedly stumbles upon a picture of Joe and Mark in the restroom. Shocked, she decides to leave immediately. Joe notices Sharon's reaction and realizes she has seen the picture. She rushes outside to find Sharon, but discovers that she's already gone. Meanwhile, Sharon visits Larry and asks if he knew about Mark's involvement with Joe. Larry denies it, but reassures Sharon of his support, earning her appreciation. She returns home and sleeps in her disordered house. The next morning, Joe visits Sharon, but Sharon angrily tells her to leave. Joe explains she didn't know Mark was married and only learned the truth after his death. She admits their relationship lasted a few months, but Sharon still insists she leave. On her way out, Joe spots a picture of Larry and identifies him as the man she saw with Mark the night he met Dux. Sharon reluctantly agrees to work with Joe, but insists they report any findings to the police. They head to Mark's office to find Larry, but discover a video on Mark's computer showing the district attorney's wife with Delizzano. Sharon records it on her phone, but is interrupted by the district attorney, Sheldon, who quickly leaves after a brief apology. Later, they meet Larry, who reveals Mark had bought encrypted texts from Dux, containing sensitive information about Delizzano executives. Furious that Larry hid Mark's infidelity, Sharon storms off. Meanwhile, Sharon encounters Lewis and Sonny, but manages to escape. Later, they trap her under a car, but with Joe's help, they escape in their vehicle. Afterward, Sharon reviews the video she recorded and notices Carmen, leaving them unsure whom to trust. They decide to visit Lisa for more information. Sharon questions Lisa about her and Sheldon's connection to the Delizzanos. Lisa insists they have no close ties, aside from participating in charity work together. While Sharon talks with Lisa, Joe excuses herself, claiming she needs the bathroom, but instead uses the opportunity to investigate. She sneaks into another room to search for documents, but is interrupted by a servant. Joe quickly leaves with Sharon before they are caught. Unbeknownst to Lisa, a recording device planted under the table captures her call to Sheldon, during which she reports Sharon and Joe's visit. The recording allows Sharon and Joe to overhear the conversation. Meanwhile, Sharon and Joe spot Carmen entering Sheldon's house. They head to the police station and share everything they've uncovered with Detective Glenn. However, Glenn dismisses their claims, stating that Carmen is already handling Mark's case. Later, Detective Carmen confronts Sharon and Joe, asking why they were investigating Delizzano. Carmen explains she was at the event for investigative purposes, which she is authorized to do. She then reveals a recording device and claims Lisa informed her that Joe was searching for documents. Sharon and Joe deny it, insisting they only had tea with Lisa. Carmen warns them to stay out of the case, emphasizing the risks involved.
Or a felony. Could go either way.
Afterward, Joe takes Sharon to the hospital to visit her birth mother. As they leave, Sharon asks Joe if Mark truly loved her. Joe admits that he didn't. He was using her to relieve his stress. However, she confesses that she genuinely loved him. Later that evening, Sharon receives a call from Lewis. He orders her to stay quiet and listen. Lewis reveals that he has captured Larry and gives Sharon an address, warning her not to bring anyone or Larry will be killed. In the background, Larry pleads with Sharon not to come. As Sharon prepares to leave, Joe asks where she's going, reminding her they had ordered pizza. Sharon lies, saying she feels Mark's presence and can't stay in the house any longer. Sharon arrives at the location Lewis provided. After confirming she came alone, Lewis commands her to follow him. Meanwhile, Larry manages to outwit his captors, killing Sonny and Lewis one by one. Larry hands the flash drive to Sharon, explaining that it contains evidence of Sheldon's involvement in the encrypted messages tied to Delitzano. He reveals they plan to sell the drive to Sheldon for $3 million. Sharon tries to call the police, but Larry stops her, saying Sheldon is on his way to collect the drive. Sheldon arrives unexpectedly, demanding an explanation for the deaths of Lewis and Sonny. Larry pulls a gun on Sheldon and orders Sharon to take the money. But she refuses. Suddenly, Lewis, still alive, shoots Larry. In the chaos, Lewis reveals that he and Larry had planned to sell the drive to Sheldon and split the money, but Larry betrayed him. Lewis denies killing Mark. Sharon accuses him of killing Dux, but Lewis insists he found Dux dead upon arrival. Sharon then confronts Larry, who confesses to killing Mark, claiming he did it because Mark was cheating on her and didn't deserve her love. Unlike him. As Sharon tries to leave, Lewis stops her and prepares to kill Larry for murdering his friend Sonny. Before he can act, a sudden explosion disrupts the scene. Joe arrives just in time to rescue Sharon. Larry, carrying the money, insists they leave together, but Joe knocks him unconscious with a swift kick. Soon after, the police arrive with Detective Carmen, taking control of the situation. In the aftermath, a news report reveals that Delitzano Industries committed environmental crimes, including contaminating local groundwater. The evidence on the flash drive implicates Delitzano executives, and Sheldon is also arrested for their involvement. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.